What is going on, everybody? Welcome back to The Haunted Beard. Thank you for joining me today. Well, it has finally arrived. Today, I want to bring to you my definitive ranking list from every horror film that I saw in 2022. This is going to be a big one. Buckle up. You're in for it. I saw 48 horror slash thriller movies in 2022, and this is my official ranking. Now, the vast majority of this are pretty much straight horror, but there's going to be, 6 or 8 or so kind of more thriller films. But this is my list. I'm making it the way that I want to. So here we go. Here is all 48 horror thriller movies from 2022. And also, real quick, before I get to the list, I have individual reviews for, I think, almost 40 of these movies. So if you want some more in-depth thoughts, I'll put the link in the description below. It's my 2022 movie review playlist. So check that out if you want some more thoughts. Here we go. So starting at the very bottom, number 48, the worst thing that I saw last year was, unfortunately, Dario Argento's Dark Glasses. And this was a part of Shudder's 31 Days of Halloween or 61 Days of Halloween, whatever it was. And this thing was pretty much just terrible all the way around. And performances were bad. There was no good kills. It was just cheesy and cringy and just all around really terrible. So that's at the bottom of the list. Some of these ones in the bottom, I'm going to probably try and rip through here pretty quickly to get to some of the better stuff and spend a little more time as we get further along on this thing. But that's number 48. Next up, number 47 is a movie, another Shudder original called Moloch. And this was another one, didn't really get a whole lot of buzz. I figured I'd check it out, and I almost forgot that I even watched it this year. It was just really unmemorable for me. When I was going back through this ranking list and I got to this one, I like had a hard time even remembering anything about it. It's just forgettable. There was nothing really in it that stood out to me, which is why it's number 47. Next up at number 46 is another Shudder film. Shudder had a lot of stinkers this year, but they did have a few good ones. So it was, I'll say overall, it was at least worth kind of weeding through some of the bad ones to get to some of the better ones that they had. But with that being said, number 46 is Raven's Hollow. And this is the one with Edgar Allan Poe. It's kind of a murder mystery type deal. This one, it has some like okay atmosphere, but I just found the whole thing really just dull and boring and lifeless and unmemorable. And that's really about it. There was just nothing in here that really stuck out to me. Again, like I said, some of the atmosphere was okay, but just the vast majority of this thing, I was just like checking my watch and seeing how much longer this thing had until it was over. So that is number 46. Next up at number 45, what do you know? Another Shudder film, and this is Saloom. And this is a Senegalese production, and this one, I wouldn't say was terrible. It just kind of lost me in the second half. So the first half of the movie was decent. It kind of has a little bit of unique style to it. They were kind of setting up a good idea. And then once sort of the horror element kicks into gear in the latter half of the movie, just none of the horror aspect of this thing really worked for me. I didn't find it scary or creepy or effective at all. And so overall, it was just kind of an unmemorable experience that didn't really add up to a whole lot. Next up at number 44 is You Are Not My Mother, and this one tells a story of this young girl whose mother goes missing for a few days, and then she comes back and is not the same. She looks the same, but is not the same. And this one, for me, I was kind of surprised. It actually had some pretty good reviews, but it just didn't really work for me. To me, this was a weird one because I felt like the title itself was like kind of a spoiler, because like the whole thing kind of culminates into this reveal that, yeah, she in fact isn't your mother. She is something else, something possessed. I can't even really remember specifically what it was, but it kind of like built to this whole thing to where it's like, well, yeah, the answer's right in the title. And just none of it really worked for me. I didn't really find it all that creepy or thrilling. And I just overall didn't really get a whole lot out of this one. Coming in at number 43, and this one might be a bit of a hot take because I know that there are some people out there who are fans of this one. But number 43 for me is The Cursed. And hear me out here, because there is an aspect of this film that I think is probably pretty great, and that is the cinematography. This movie is visually like phenomenal. It's one of the most beautiful and great looking films I saw of all last year. And the director, you can definitely tell, has an amazing visual eye, and just the presentation of it's great. However, I just didn't really jive with the story. It's definitely slower paced, which isn't necessarily a bad thing, but I kind of found it all a little bit boring. And unfortunately, the main thing that really kind of killed it for me was it's a werewolf movie, and it does this really good job of establishing it's like a period piece of, like, I don't know, mid late 1800s. I can't remember exactly, but everything looks really convincing and authentic. And then when you actually finally see the werewolf, it's this CGI creature, and it just kind of took me completely out of it and really sort of ruined it for me. And it's a bummer, because I think that there is some good stuff here, but I just felt the story was a bit lacking, and really just the CGI creature just kind of killed it for me. Number 42 is the Netflix original Choose or Die. And this overall was just, again, kind of just an ineffective experience. I thought some of it was pretty cheesy. Some of it came across as laughable, where they were trying to be scary and trying to be creepy, and it just didn't work. The only saving grace here is the lead performance by Lola Evans. This was the first film I've seen her in. I think it's one of her first movies. I thought she was actually really solid. So I think she does show some potential here. I'm kind of curious to see what she does next. But overall, the horror aspect of this, I just didn't find it creepy or scary at all. And like I said, a lot of the attempts of it are just funny, and they're not supposed to be. So Choose or Die sits at number 42. Next up at 41 is another Shudder film, and that is The Sadness. And I know this movie has its fans, and this is kind of a love it or hate it type deal, and I lean closer towards the hate it side of that aisle. But the main reason for this is that obviously this movie, kind of its selling point was its extreme over the top blood and gore and all that stuff, which I don't have an issue with. But to me, this movie was just trying to be gross just for the sake of being gross. I didn't really find any of the lead characters all that interesting. I didn't really find the story all that compelling. It's pretty much just sort of a bare bones type narrative. And there's a whole added element with the infected people, where there's like a sexual assault element that I just thought was just gross and like really unnecessary. And so everything in this just kind of came across as really try hard, and just, like I said, it's just trying to be gross just for the sake of being gross. And there's not really anything else to it. And so overall, I just didn't really have a good time with The Sadness. Next up at number 40 is Deadstream. And I feel like this is another bit of a hot take, and it's another Shudder film. I promise there's some Shudder movies that are higher on this list. And this one too, I totally get why people like it. And I think the main guy, Joseph Winter, who is the lead actor and the director, and I think he's the writer too, is talented. And this is a found footage, which I'm a sucker for found footage. And I think the found footage aspect and the horror aspect of this is actually pretty good. And I think the director is talented. However, I thought his character was just kind of obnoxious. And I get that he's supposed to be, because it's supposed to be a whole commentary and satire on, social media, YouTube stars kind of thing. But I just found it obnoxious. I just didn't really enjoy watching his character, and unfortunately, the humor here just didn't land for me. And that's kind of the make it or break it deal, I feel like, with this movie. If you think it's funny, if the humor works for you, I think you're really going to have a good time with it. And it just unfortunately didn't work for me. But I want to see this guy do more. I do think he is talented. I just don't jive with the humor here. So that's why Deadstream sits back towards the back of the list at number 40. All right, so before we get to number 39, I want to make a note that we are kind of moving up a tier here. We've kind of taken a step up in quality. These ones are not terrible. These ones have some redeeming qualities. So here we go. Next up at number 39 is You Won't Be Alone. And this is kind of a weird one for me, because I actually think this is a good film. And you're probably wondering, well, then why is it all the way back at number 39? The main reason for that is that this is one that I can definitely acknowledge. I think this is a good film. Like, objectively, it's well made. It has some really kind of interesting, just some thoughts and ideas and themes. It's just one that I don't really have much of a desire to return to. It's kind of very sort of pondering and meditative and things like that, and oftentimes I find that interesting, and I did hear it's just one that I just didn't quite fully connect with. And I think Numi Rapace in it is pretty good. And again, this is a good film. I just feel like it just kind of wasn't my own personal subjective flavor. And so this is one that I think I would recommend to some people if you kind of have very specific particular tastes. And like I said, it is a good film. It's just not one that I really have much of a desire to return to. Number 38, we have Speak No Evil. And this is a Danish film. And this is kind of an interesting one too, because I think the horror elements here are really effective, and this movie is creepy and off-putting and disturbing. And so that whole element I think is really effective. However, what kind of killed this for me a little bit is just the characters. And the characters in this, particularly the husband, is I grew increasingly frustrated with his lack of action, with his really sort of lack of manliness to step up and take action and do the right thing. And it was just so irritating and frustrating because I just was like trying not to yell at the screen like, dude, do something. And he just continually, him and his wife really just continually make just really poor and stupid decisions that I can't fathom how any parent would make some of the decisions that these people made. And so this is a movie that, like, I can appreciate the atmosphere, the creepiness factor of it, because it really is disturbing, and so that's effective. But man, the characters in here were just insufferable. That brings us to number 37, and that is Dashcam. And this is another one that's kind of like Speak No Evil, where I think the sort of horror scariness element works really good, but the characters are just brutal. And this is one that I described in my review to where it's like you have to dig through so much crap to get to the good stuff. I think there's like 2 or 3 sequences in here that are some really pretty fantastic found footage sequences, just with the in-camera effects that they do. There's this like car crash sequence that's like really impressive and amazing, but there's just so much crap that you have to dig through to get to the good stuff. And it's largely the main character, which is going to be the make it or break it for probably just about everybody. And the main character is just awful to watch. She's just obnoxious and annoying. And I know it's supposed to be that way. It's intentional. I get it. But I didn't enjoy it. And it's, you know, say what you want about all her political views, whatever, but regardless of her views and opinions, her actions speak louder. And the way she acts, she's just kind of a terrible person who's only concerned about herself. And it's just rude and obnoxious and just, you know, kind of ruins the movie. So it's one of those things to where, again, as a person who likes found footage, there are some sequences in this that I think are genuinely pretty great, but there's just so much crap to get through to get to it. Next up at number 36 is A Wounded Fawn. This is another Shudder film, and this has some pretty decent aspects of it. Overall, I just kind of found it pretty average, but I think the performances are pretty good. I like that they actually shot the movie on film. You can actually tell it definitely has sort of just a look and almost like a textural quality to it that I was like, I was kind of watching it and looking at it. I was like, did they shoot this on film? Sure enough, they did. So that was kind of cool. But I think the performances are pretty good. And I think it does have a pretty good kind of suspenseful, tension-filled buildup. And this one gets into some like abstract and symbolic and mythological type imagery, which I appreciate the effort, but it didn't really do a whole lot for it. I didn't really find that it added it up to a whole lot. And overall, the story here is I thought pretty average, pretty standard. It's not really doing anything that we haven't seen before. Coming in at number 35 is Fresh, and there are aspects of this that I enjoyed and thought were pretty good. Sebastian Stan, I think, is the highlight. I liked his performance, his character. He's really solid. And this one is kind of similar to the previous film, A Wounded Fawn, in that it has to kind of do with this relationship, and the woman is getting involved with a guy who has some really dark and disturbing secrets. And again, I felt overall like this one is a little bit better than A Wounded Fawn. Again, I think the main performance, like I said, is pretty solid, but it didn't really do anything super great. Like it's pretty decent. I enjoyed it for the most part. I thought some of the characters made some stupid decisions and stuff like that, and it just didn't really do a whole lot for me. Like I enjoyed my time well enough, but it was all right. All right, coming in at number 34, and I want to warn you, the next two are going to be a bit of a hot take, but here we go. It's my list. I got to be honest. So coming in at number 34 for me is The Black Phone, and I know a lot of people loved this, and fortunately for me, I just found it overall pretty average. Now, there is some solid stuff here. Obviously, Ethan Hawke is great. And the girl, I don't know her name, who plays the young girl, the sister, I thought her character and her performance was really solid as well. Those are the best things about this. I found the story overall, it was okay. And I didn't really find there to be any sort of suspense in this movie at all. I thought there was like one pretty good suspenseful sequence where the boy is trying to escape and Ethan Hawke is sleeping. That's a good scene. But the rest of it, I just didn't really find suspenseful. I didn't really find scary. And there's a lot of, I think, really cheap and repetitive jump scares that are just like, I mean, come on, like, can't we do better than this? And I just found overall the experience overall to be just pretty average. So I know it's a hot take, but like I said, I got to be honest. So that's number 34 for me, The Black Phone. And here we go. Here's the other one. Number 33 for me is Prey. And I know a lot of people loved it, but man, I just didn't really get a whole lot out of it. I did like, again, the performance. Seems like the performance for a lot of these are the highlights, and the rest of it just kind of didn't really work. And this is kind of another example. I do like the creature design. I like the performance by Amber Midthunder. I think her character and her performance is really solid. And what I didn't really like about this is I think there's a lot of pretty bad CGI that is just really kind of took me out of this thing with the animals, the deer, the bear. It just doesn't really look all that great. And I just kind of found it annoying, the whole kind of, I understand this is a film with a strong female lead, which is great. And again, Amber Midthunder, I thought she was really good. But they have to have this whole aspect where all the guys in her tribe are, oh, you're a woman, you belong in the kitchen, you can't do this. And it's just kind of annoying at this point. Like, haven't we seen that sort of trope played out a million times? And it's just like, I'm kind of just ready to be done with that whole thing in movies. Anyways, and then I was really left unsatisfied by the ending and how, I mean, if you haven't seen it by now, brief spoiler alert, how she kills the predator. I just thought it was like this completely ridiculous, unbelievable, like, shut your brain down moment that I just kind of rolled my eyes. And so overall, there's a few like pretty good action sequences here, but the vast majority of this, I just didn't really enjoy all that much. Next up at number 32 is Glorious, and I feel like now that we're kind of approaching the middle of the list, there's a handful of movies that are kind of in that middle where I don't really have super strong opinions on, like one way or the other. It's like I watched it, it was like, okay, that was fine, it was decent, I had a decent enough time with it. I don't really have super strong opinions one way or the other. And this is kind of one of those movies. It's not really something I have really much of a desire to return to, but it was decent enough for what it gave me. I liked J.K. Simmons' voiceover. For what you get out of him is just a voiceover, but I thought there is some kind of fun humor in here to be had, and the vast majority of this takes place in a rest stop bathroom, which is just kind of weird, and this one's just kind of weird and bizarre, and it kind of has some sort of interesting thoughts and ideas to it a little bit, but overall, it's just it's a decent enough time. It's okay. It's just kind of middle of the road stuff. Number 31 is Christmas Bloody Christmas, and this one's still kind of a mid-tier, but overall I had a decent enough time with it. There are certain aspects that I liked, other aspects that I didn't really care for. The characters here are okay. There's quite, I think, maybe an overly long kind of build up to once all hell breaks loose and Santa Claus starts killing people kind of thing. And one of the aspects for me that really kind of took this down a few notches is just the amount of like profanity and crudeness and vulgarity from the characters is just so over the top and like ridiculous. It's just kind of unbelievable. And that's not something like profanity and stuff like that doesn't really bother me in movies, but this is like it's at such a level, it's just kind of outrageous and just completely over the top. And so there's kind of just a slower build up. I didn't really care. The characters are okay. Didn't really care about that aspect. But once the horror element clicks into gear, you get some nice slasher kills. I like kind of the Terminator vibe they went for. It's got some really cool colors and just the whole visual presentation is pretty nice. So overall, I would still recommend Christmas Bloody Christmas, but it's still kind of a mid-tier movie for me. Next up at number 30 is Something in the Dirt, and this is the latest film from Justin Benson and Aaron Moorhead, and some of the more interesting directors working in horror right now. And this is a film that is like almost off the charts in terms of its ambition and ideas. And it's about these two guys who live in this apartment complex right next to each other, and they witness this sort of like paranormal type event. And they just start recording it and try to make a documentary about it. And like I said, this one just has ideas for days. And I mean, it just all sorts of just wild, crazy concepts and questions and stuff like that. But ultimately, in the end, it didn't really add up to a whole lot for me. It just kind of like, it was sort of this splatter approach of where they just threw a bunch of stuff at the screen and saw, hope to see what would stick. And not all of it really kind of comes together. It's just this whole bunch of ideas that ultimately they don't really have time to kind of flesh out. And so, in the end, it just doesn't add up to a whole lot. So overall, I do appreciate the ambition. I think these guys are really creative. They have a really unique voice. This one just didn't quite come together for me. Coming in at number 29, we've got probably the movie that upset people the most this past year, and that is Halloween Ends. And like I said, I've got a review for the vast majority of these. This one, I've got like a 25 to 30 minute spoiler review. So check that out if you want, obviously, some more in-depth thoughts. But this movie is just a weird one for me. This is just kind of an unbelievable, sort of mind-blowing experience in a very strange way. And if to kind of summarize it all really, really quickly, I like the story for the most part. I like the new character, and I thought they kind of explored some interesting things, but it's just a story that I feel like has pretty much no reason to exist in this universe. And in a film that promised to kind of be the culmination, the climax of the Michael and Laurie story, to get so little Michael and Laurie is just kind of like, what is going on here? It's such a curveball. And so, yeah, check out my review for more thoughts, but this is just a weird one. Number 28 brings us Violent Night, and this one's obviously a bit more of an action thriller, but I still wanted to put it on the list. And this is one that overall I would say I had a decent enough time with, but I wouldn't say it was great by any means. It was a decent enough time for the movie that it is. Obviously, David Harbour is the standout here as Santa Claus. I like his portrayal of the character. I liked his character and just sort of his whole kind of very sort of pessimistic, negative view towards humanity. He's this drunk and all that stuff, but I kind of like how they turn him into kind of a bit of an action hero. And so this one does have a couple pretty solid action sequences. Not all the comedy lands, but some of it does pretty good. The main thing that I kind of takes this one down for me for being like something I think is really solid is I didn't really think the villain was all that great. John Leguizamo, his character, I didn't think his performance was really all that great either. So it's kind of hindered it for me a little bit too. And then also too, I felt like the tone was a bit weird in this one, where like you have this definite R-rated kind of, more hardcore action thriller with some pretty gnarly kills, but then they also kind of bring in this sort of like childlike emotional sentimentality, heartwarming moments to it that it just kind of didn't totally gel for me. So overall, I'm still more on the positive this one, but this one is still kind of in that mid-tier sort of range. Next up at number 27 is another Shudder release, and that is Who Invited Them? And overall, we're still kind of in that mid-tier range. I had a decent enough time with it. This one isn't really doing anything new or revolutionary in terms of the story. You've got these new neighbors coming over to this housewarming, house welcoming party to this new couple's house, and the neighbors are a little weird, and things kind of this slow burn sort of story to where ultimately you reach the climax and kind of all hell breaks loose sort of thing. And so something we've seen before. It's a decent enough time. The performances and the characters are pretty good, and there's kind of some odd, weird eeriness to it all. And so I don't really have a whole lot to say about this one. It's a decent enough time. I enjoyed myself for what it was, and that's really about it. All right, time to move up another tier here. So before we get to number 26, we're stepping up another level. So number 26 is We're All Going to the World's Fair. And this is one I said in my review that I really appreciate. I think there's just a lot of kind of creativity here. And it just, the director and kind of the presentation of this, I think really brings a unique sort of voice. And this one is really different, and it definitely stands out in a memorable way. It doesn't all quite come together for me. It doesn't quite stick the landing. It doesn't have quite just kind of that punch of an impact, but there is quite a bit here to appreciate. I think the lead performance, I can't think of the girl's name off top, but I believe this is her like acting debut. I think she's really solid, and this one just kind of has a really interesting and different sort of vibe to it. It is kind of creepy. It is a bit off-putting. You're not really sure where it's going or what to make of it. And so overall, I would recommend this one. It doesn't quite come together, but I'm definitely looking forward to seeing what the director brings us next, though. Next up at number 25 is another Shudder movie, and that is The Apology, starring Anna Gunn and Linus Roach. And I'm kind of a sucker for these sort of isolated, single location type movies that really kind of present themselves like a stage play. And there's just something about just having a small cast, a couple actors, few actors, just delivering sort of the main suspense and tension just through the dialogue. And so for the most part, I had a pretty good time with this one. I just like that whole stage play presentation. I think it's got some pretty good suspense and thrills. I like the characters. I think the performances are pretty solid as well. It does fit in some pretty good twists and turns, and I thought the ending was pretty solid as well. So overall, The Apology, I think it's worth watching, and I enjoyed it. Next up at number 24, we're halfway there, and number 24 is Smile. And this is one that I pretty much agree with kind of the general consensus, being that this thing isn't going to sort of change the game in terms of its story. It's stuff that we have seen before, but I think it pulls it off pretty effectively. I like the lead performance by Sosie Bacon. I think she's pretty solid. And overall, I like the story. I do think it's a bit long. They probably could have trimmed it down a little bit. It kind of goes on for a bit longer than it needs to, but there are some, I think, just well executed horror scenes and creepy scenes. And the scene in the beginning when it kind of starts things off and the woman's in her office and, you know, you see the smile and you see she tells her story. Just a really solid scene there. And so, again, this isn't one that's going to reinvent the wheel, but I think in terms of kind of treading down a path that we've been down before, the movie does a pretty good job. So overall, I would recommend it. I had a pretty good time with Smile overall. Number 23 is Men, and this is the latest film from Alex Garland. And this was another kind of love it or hate it type movie. And some of the standouts here for me is I think the performances are really good. Jesse Buckley's good, Rory Kinnear's good in the variety of different characters that he plays. And this one, there is some stuff to appreciate about it. It is really preachy, and it kind of just drives its point home a little too much. It kind of beats you over the head with its message a little bit. And so I didn't really enjoy that aspect of it. However, I did enjoy just kind of the, I guess, sort of creative ambition of it. And this is a pretty weird and bizarre one, especially the final sequence is really disturbing. But this is one that I think is just really ambitious, for better or for worse. And I tend to give movies that I think are trying to do something different, trying to be just ambitious and do something weird and bizarre like this does. I'm a little bit more forgiving on those types of movies than movies that just kind of play it safe and give us something that we've seen a million times before. Not everything it tries to do works, but again, I just kind of appreciate that it really just tried to do something different. It tried to present its story in a unique and different sort of way. And so again, I appreciate the ambition overall of Men. Number 22 is The Fireplace, aka the Adult Swim Yule Log. And this is just a wacky little movie that it's almost kind of a gimmick because it uses the seasonal Yule log videos that people like to play, but turns it into a horror movie. And this is one that really flew under the radar and I didn't find out about until like right before it came out. And it just sounded like such a ridiculous concept that I was like, all right, let's check this thing out. And I had a pretty good time with it overall. And really the appeal here is just kind of to see what they're able to do given some of the constraints that the filmmakers put on themselves. And by and large, the first, I think at least half hour of the movie or so is just one static shot. And it's kind of interesting to see, given those sort of restraints and restrictions, what they're able to do. And eventually it kind of opens up into sort of a full, normal type movie with editing and different camera angles and all that stuff. But this one it just goes into some really unexpected and surprising directions that just kind of make it an exciting and fun watch. And so this isn't like an all-timer by any means, but I enjoyed myself with the Adult Swim Yule Log, and I think it's worth checking out. Number 21 is Watcher, and this is one that, as I've kind of given this time to sort of digest, and it's been probably a few months now since I watched it, I kind of like it a little bit more than I did when I initially watched it, just kind of thinking back on it. And this is one where Micah Monroe's performance, I think, is one of the main highlights, and also this is a slower movie, but I think the suspense and kind of that slow burn tension and stuff like that is directed and handled really well by the director Chloe Okuno. And this is her feature film debut, if I'm not mistaken. And so I just think it presents a pretty good sort of build throughout the film where that tension and that suspense is handled quite well. Where I think it misses from being like a real sort of top tier movie is overall in the narrative is there's a point in the movie where the scene happens and I more or less was able to kind of predict how everything was able to play out, and I was pretty much right on. So I felt like they had an opportunity here to really kind of add an effective twist at the end or something unexpected and end this movie in a way that would not be typical, but they kind of just went the more traditional route. So overall, would still recommend it, still had a good time with this, and so Watcher is number 21. Next up at number 20 is Sissy, and this is my second favorite Shudder original film of the year. And this is one that attempted to do something similar as Deadstream, in that it's kind of this satire, comedic take on sort of the internet personality. And one of the highlights here is the lead performance by Aisha D, as she is this kind of social media influencer, sort of like, I don't know, wellness expert or something like that you would call it, only her life is kind of in disarray, right? So she's putting up this fake front online. And this one I was still on the fence about halfway through. And the reason being is that with this type of movie, when you're kind of doing a satire on sort of the social media, internet personality, a lot of the characters in here are just as obnoxious and irritating as a lot of the people that they're kind of, pointing fun at. And so the characters here, I was just kind of like, ugh. And then you get the slasher element, which kicks into gear in the second half of the movie. And man, I just had quite a bit of fun with it. It's entertaining, it is funny, and it's just a good time as her character really just snaps and sort of all hell breaks loose. And I just had a smile on my face throughout a lot of the second half of this. And there's some kind of nods to some slasher classics and stuff like that that I kind of appreciated and enjoyed. And so overall, I think Sissy is a pretty fun slasher movie. So it sits at my list at number 20. Number 19 is my favorite Shudder original from last year, and that is VHS 99. This is a found footage horror anthology, a part of the, obviously, VHS franchise, and this is by no means the best one. There are a couple stinkers. There's 5 short films. A couple of them aren't very good. One of them's pretty good, and there's 2 that I think are pretty solid, but those 2 I think are good enough to really kind of set this thing up and make it stand out. And so my 2 favorites are Suicide Bid and Ozzy's Dungeon, and you just get some good gore, practical effects, body horror. You get some just kind of weird bizarreness and good sort of thrills and just some good fun. And so those 2 really kind of make this thing stand out, and overall had a pretty fun time with VHS 99. So it sits at number 19. Okay, before we get to number 18, we're moving up to the final tier, and all of these movies are kind of what I would put on like a best of or my favorite movies of the year list. And by and large, there's going to be a lot of different in terms of my personal grades for these, but these are just the ones that I had the most fun with or that I find the most rewatchable. And again, it's just my own personal subjective list, but these 18 I would give a solid recommendation and say are the best in my favorite horror movies of the year. So here we go. Number 18 is Earwig. And this is a weird one. This is directed by Lucille Hadzihalilovic, I think is her last name. She's actually the wife of French director Gaspar Noé. And this is just a bizarre movie, but man, it's one of those movies that, again, I just kind of really appreciate the ambition. It's not something I can say I fully understood or can fully explain, but it offers just such a unique experience, unlike anything that I saw from all of last year. It's about this girl whose teeth are made of ice, and she is more or less kind of forced to stay at this one house with a caretaker. And one day the caretaker gets a call and he is asked to prepare the girl to leave. And that little synopsis barely does this thing justice, because this is just a really, as I've said, wild experience. There's definitely some fantasy elements here in Earwig. Not everything is going to make complete sort of logic, rational sense. But again, I just like that the movie kind of just is its own unique experience. It really stood out to me. And it's one that I will enjoy returning to, just trying to kind of chew on it more and more and maybe put little pieces of the puzzle together. And so Earwig is quite an experience. And so that's why it sits at number 18. Next up at number 17 is Scream 5, or should I say Scream 2022. I don't know why they didn't just call it Scream 5, but whatever. Anyways, I'm a pretty big Scream fan, and so just kind of watching a movie that takes place in this world with the characters, at least some of the characters that I've known and loved for many years now, is just something that I overall enjoyed and is something that I will continue to return to. And there are elements about this that I'm not a huge fan of. I don't think were great. But like I said, it's just being in the world with these characters, and I do think that there is some pretty good stuff here. And I like that they're kind of, giving new life to this series, and I'm interested to see what these new filmmakers and the directors do going forward. I like Jenna Ortega's character. I like that they brought in kind of a new variation on Randy with the character of Mindy, so I'm definitely on board with that. And I think this is the best David Arquette has ever been as Dewey. Man, he is really solid in this. And the scene that I'm talking about is just, oh man. But what a way to go out. And Dewey, rest in peace, man. I'm going to miss you, buddy. But anyways, yeah, I just have a lot of fun with Scream 5. It does have some pretty good kills. And I think it kind of gives something interesting, some interesting kind of commentary towards the end there with all the toxic fandom sort of thing and everything. So overall, have a fun time with Scream 5. And it's one that I'll plan on returning to and looking forward to seeing what they do with Scream 6. Next up at number 16 is Bones and All. And this is the last movie that I watched on my list, and I just dropped a review for it a few days ago. But Bones and All is a pretty solid movie, a character-driven movie more so than a plot-driven movie. But the performances here are one of the highlights. Taylor Russell as Marin, Timothy Chalamet as Lee are really good. And I just like how grounded this is. I like how kind of realistic it is. This is a romantic drama that involves the two main characters who happen to be cannibals. And it is just interesting and different. And again, I just like how grounded it is. Obviously, as I've mentioned, the acting performances, I can't talk about this without talking about Mark Rylance, because holy smokes, he is just absolutely fantastic. One of the best performances from anything that I saw all of last year. He just completely disappears into the role and is just fantastic in this. The music here also really stands out and is a pretty big highlight for me as well. And this has, I think, one of the most memorable final scenes, final 10 minutes from anything that I saw all last year, as man, I will not forget it anytime soon. So Bones and All, if you haven't seen it, it's definitely worth a watch. Go check it out, and it is on my list at number 16. Number 15 is Jordan Peele's Nope. And this is one of the most fun and just kind of entertaining experiences from all of last year. I like Jordan Peele. I just like his creativity and his ambition. Not all of his movies have been like super top tier. But again, I'm just somebody who likes to just see directors make the movie that they want to make, for better or for worse. And Jordan Peele, as I said, is ambitious. He's got a unique voice. He's got a unique vision, and he gives us something different than anybody else is going to give us. And so I just really appreciate that and admire that about the guy. And Nope is just a fun time. It feels like just this big blockbuster type movie with this big, grandiose, epic scale to it. And that was just a lot of fun. I think, again, the performances, I feel like I mentioned the performances in a lot of these. There's just a lot of good horror performances from last year, but Daniel Kaluuya and Keke Palmer are both really good. And I just have a fun time in Jordan Peele's movies, and obviously specifically this one, just kind of trying to peel back the layers, right? And I like kind of the metaphors and the symbolism that he uses, and I like thinking about it and chewing on it, and this is one that I've been needing to return to. But Nope is a lot of fun. It is one of the more entertaining movies, I think, from all of last year, and so that's why Nope is number 15. Next up at number 14 is Hellraiser, the latest from David Bruckner, who I think is one of the better directors today working in horror movies. And Hellraiser is a franchise that I don't really have much of a connection to. I think there's 11 movies in it now, and in addition to this one, I've seen the first 4. And I don't really love any of them. I think the first one particularly is pretty good. But man, I think David Bruckner does a pretty good job kind of injecting some new life and kind of really re-energizing and restarting this franchise, as I didn't really have hardly any expectations for this thing until I saw his name attached to it, and then they elevated a little bit, and I think he delivers a pretty good movie. I like the lead performance from Odessa Azion as the character of Riley, and she is one of the more kind of complex characters. I think she's somebody that is a mess up and a screw up and is trying to sort of turn her life around, but she's one that we kind of empathize with, and we want to see her succeed, and we root for her. And so I think she's one of the better characters in from last year. And then I think Jamie Clayton as sort of the new rendition of Pinhead is pretty fantastic. And there's just some really cool scenes. I think Bruckner really kind of nailed the vibe and the feel of this. There's some really cool scenes between Pinhead and Riley's character where you just get some just crazy, creepy, disturbing dialogue and stuff like that just really works, that I really quite like. There's the whole sequence in the van, I'll just say the van scene, that I think is just pretty phenomenal. The makeup and practical effects in this are really solid, and I like too that they go more into some of the kind of lore and the background in terms of what the cube is and what the Cenobites are, it just kind of fleshing out the world a little bit. And so I'm hoping we get more to continue this franchise. I think it is headed in a pretty good and pretty interesting direction. So Hellraiser sits at number 14. Number 13 is Incantation, the Netflix original film from Taiwan that really was kind of the sleeper hit of the year. I'd say took the internet by storm and just kind of exploded when it came out on Netflix. And this is a pretty fun time. Now, I will admit, this one kind of breaks some of the fundamental rules of found footage, which I feel like 9 times out of 10 would really kind of put me off to a movie and irritate me. But Incantation is just so good that I was able to kind of forgive that aspect. And it just has this really interesting story to it. One of the aspects about it that I think it was unexpected but was really strong was just the mother-daughter relationship, as there's some genuinely like heartfelt and dramatic and emotional moments where you really feel for the mother as she's going through this horrific experience with her daughter. And there's just some particular scenes that really kind of hit you in the feels a little bit. That was just unexpected, but I think it just adds to the overall experience and strength of this movie. And there's some really great found footage scenes in here. And obviously the highlight here is when they finally go into the tunnel. And man, it is one of the best and more memorable scenes from all of last year, as I can remember watching it being like, oh man, it just feeling the intensity of it, feeling the suspense of it, feeling the scares of it, of just not sure what's getting ready to happen. It's just a really effective scene. And so this is a good one. It's got some other kind of just interesting and unique elements to it with some of the like visual illusions they present on screen and everything. And it's got a pretty killer little twist in it at the end as well. And so Incantation, man, by some crazy chance you haven't seen it yet, what are you doing? Go check this thing out. Okay, coming in at number 12 is Bodies, Bodies, Bodies. And this one and my next film, I would say, are the 2 funniest horror films of the year. And this one really does kind of the dark satire really effectively. And I just had an overall really solid and fun and entertaining experience with Bodies, Bodies, Bodies. Rachel Sennott is the highlight for me. Man, she is funny and just pretty great. And this was one I was a little hesitant going into. I wasn't sure if it was going to work for me, because I know it's, obviously a satire on the Gen Z generation. And so you kind of have to play into some stereotypes. And when you do that, you have a tendency to just kind of create these cardboard cutout caricatures of the people that you're satirizing. But this one, it just worked for me. I thought it was really good. The performances all the way around are pretty good. Not all the humor lands, but a vast majority of it does. Like I said, Rachel Sennott's character is really good. And I think what really helped elevate this one for me is just that it is a murder mystery. This is a sort of isolated, closed off location, a la Agatha Christie type deal, where you're just trying to figure out the whodunit. And so that sort of storyline, it just grabs me. I can't help but taking to it. I just absolutely love the sort of murder mystery aspect. And this one has some really fun kills, and there's just some really solid scenes where the gloves come off and these girls just start hurling verbal abuse at one another, and just every insult in the book. And, let me tell you what I really think about you. And it's just a whole lot of fun as all hell breaks loose, and they just start going after one another. I couldn't help but just enjoy it and have a fun time. And then when you get to the ending, I thought if you were ever going to end a murder mystery whodunit in this way, what a great movie to do it in. And so the ending, I think, is probably a bit of a make it or break it for people, but I thought it worked perfectly for this. And so Bodies, 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 it's a pretty fun one. Number 11 is the other funniest horror film of the year, and that is The Menu. And this is how you do horror comedy. This is just good, dark humor. And this thing is just a fun experience. I think, again, the performances here, Anya Taylor-Joy and Ralph Fiennes are really good. Nicholas Hoult, I really liked his character and just sort of his reaction to everything going on. And there's a lot here to kind of dig into regarding kind of the commentary on all the characters and their behaviors and stuff like that. And I get into a little bit more of that in my review, but this is one, too, that it's just a fun ride. Again, I like sort of the isolated, closed off, kind of single location type stuff. It's always interesting for me to see what filmmakers are able to do when you're kind of confined and restrained to one particular space. And this is just a good testament that you don't need these huge, big budget stuff if you just have a good story. And the Menu is just, it's a good story, and it's got some nice twists and turns and unexpected moments. And I think the ending, I mentioned in my review, the ending, when I first watched it, I was kind of like, a little unsatisfied. And then I kind of thought about it a little more, and I was like, you know what? I think it's pretty good. And so I like the ending as well. And so the Menu is a good time. It sits for me on my list at number 11. All right, everybody. If you've stuck in this far, you deserve a pat on the back or something, but we have finally reached the top 10. So here we go. Coming in at number 10 is Pearl. And Pearl for me has, I'm going to say, the second best, you'll find out what the first is, obviously, but the second best acting performance of anything that I saw of last year. Mia Goth is just, whatever word you want to use, she's absolutely phenomenal in this thing and just incredible. Her performance is amazing. The character is great. And Ty West is quickly moving up the charts on my list of favorite horror directors, as this is another film that has just such a great visual presentation about it. And it just feels so authentic to the time period in which it was set in. I like the connection that this has and some of the references it has to The Wizard of Oz. I thought that was an interesting and unique choice. I like that this is such a character-driven film. It also has some good kills in it as well. And I like that it opens up insight into the character of Pearl, which obviously has a connection to X. Hint, hint, that one's going to be coming up pretty soon. Anyways, there's just so much here to really appreciate and enjoy, and Mia Goth just carries this thing on her back with ease. I can't say enough good stuff about her. The monologue that she delivers later on in the movie is one of the highlights of the year, and I just really enjoyed the ride that this thing put you on as you just slowly watched Pearl's character just completely unravel. And man, it's just a fun time. So that's why Pearl is in my top 10 at number 10. And that takes us to number 9. And number 9 for me is the latest from Park Chan-wook, Decision to Leave. This is from South Korea. And this one is more of a mystery thriller than a horror movie. But man, what a great story. This is also kind of like Bones and All, a romantic drama, but it's wrapped in a mystery thriller. And this is also a very sort of grounded type movie, but the lead performances are really good. And I just like how he handles the whole romantic aspect of it with there's just a lot of subtlety and restraint and just kind of a glance of the eyes, and it's nothing is over the top and over dramatic. And so it's handled really well. The mystery centered to this film, I just like how it all unfolds. It's just this really well structured, well layered, well thought out and written movie that is just a really engaging story. There's just some really interesting editing choices and editing techniques in this that really help it stand out. And it's just, like I said, a really solid story and a really solid mystery with some good surprises and unexpected twists and turns. And it ultimately culminates into a pretty memorable ending. And I'll just leave it at that. So Decision to Leave sits at number 9. Okay, coming in at number 8, we've got Glass Onion. And this is obviously more of a mystery thriller, kind of a lighthearted comedic mystery thriller. But this is just good, fun entertainment. I mean, I don't know how you wouldn't enjoy this to some degree, especially if you like the original. I think it is pretty much on the same scale as the original. I'm not exactly sure which one I prefer. I think they're both quite good. And this is a murder mystery, and as I've said in my review, I just absolutely love murder mysteries. I can't get enough of this genre. The whodunit type thing, where you're trying to piece the puzzle together and put the clues together to try to figure out who done it. I just love it. I love playing detective when watching a movie. It's just so much fun. The characters here are pretty fun. Ed Norton's really good. Daniel Craig's good. Janelle Monáe, I think, is the highlight of this movie. And this is another movie, kind of much like Decision to Leave, that is just structured so well. And the way it's edited together and the mystery is put together, it just shows that there was so much thought into the writing process, as the way it's, again, structured and edited together too just maximizes the mystery and the surprises. And it's got everything you can want in this type of movie. It's funny, it's got good characters, good performances, and just a great mystery with twists and turns galore. And it's just a really fun and entertaining time overall. So Glass Onion sits at number 8. Coming in at number 7 is one that I haven't seen show up on anybody else's year-end list. I haven't seen anybody else talking about it. This thing flew completely under the radar, and I can't figure out why, because I think it is pretty great, and that is The Righteous. And The Righteous is a religious horror, but it's also a drama, mystery, thriller as well. First of all, this thing looks gorgeous. It might be the best looking movie I saw all of last year. High contrast, stark black and white, which really kind of plays into some of the religious and moral themes of this movie. But man, this is one that is written and directed by this guy named Mark O'Brien. This is his feature film debut, and my goodness, this guy's got a lot of potential if this is his first film. And this is another kind of smaller scale, not quite one location, but pretty minimal locations with a really small cast, only a handful of characters. And again, it's just another testament to, you just need a good story and good performances to make a good movie. And this one just has some really interesting themes. I really like religious horror, typically because of kind of the ideas and themes that it often brings up. And this is just a good one. This one also has another really good performance by the lead, Henry Czerny, I believe is how you pronounce his name. And him and his wife are at their, I believe it's vacation home, and they're greeted by this mysterious stranger. And this one just has a really nice kind of slow build to it. And it's just eerie, creepy vibes, mysterious vibes. You're not entirely sure what to make of things or how to interpret things. And that's just that sort of atmosphere, those sort of vibes that a movie gives off are just right up my alley. And man, The Righteous, I think, is just, it's really good. And man, if you haven't seen it, which I know there's got to be a lot of people that haven't seen it because nobody's talking about it, but man, do your best to go out and find this thing because you got to watch it. It's really good. So that's my number 7, The Righteous. Number 6, Terrifier 2. And as I described this in my review, this is the Thanksgiving feast of slasher movies. This thing is so completely egregious and over the top in every possible way. And I just had an absolute blast with it. I mean, this thing is just crazy. Art the Clown is the perfect mixture of the stone cold killers of Michael and Jason and the entertaining performance killers of Chucky and Freddy. And he's great. The lead performance by Lauren Lavera, again, another really good performance with a really good character. And man, I can't wait to see more from her. A great final girl. Yes, it's a bit too long, but that didn't really hinder it all that much for me. But also, too, of course, you have to mention the kills in this, because this is, no kidding, probably the best practical effects I have seen in any horror movie. It's certainly in the conversation of being at the very top of that list. The practical effects in this are just phenomenal, and the kills are absolutely brutal. I mean, brutal. And even knowing that going in, when you hear about things, it kind of messes with your expectations. So I'm expecting, it's going to be over the top, and holy smokes, it even exceeded my already elevated expectation. The kills are just insane. And I mean, this thing is just a blast. If you like slasher movies if you like self-indulgent, over-the-top slasher movies, dude, Terrifier 2 is just a complete riot. So, yeah, it sits at number 6. Number 5 for me is X. And you knew it was coming after I gave you that little hint talking about Pearl. And I like this one a little more than Pearl because I like that it's a bit more narrative sort of forward than character, but I like too that it's more of a Texas Chainsaw type movie, which I absolutely love Texas Chainsaw. So look, this movie is pretty great, and I cannot wait to see what Ty West does when he caps off the trilogy with Maxine. But this is just a whole lot of fun. It's got just good characters, good performances, some gnarly memorable kills, and just the most unique and unexpected slasher killers in quite some time, right? I mean, again, you get the character of Pearl in here. I mean, I could go on and on about Mia Goth's performance in this movie as well. I mean, she is just like, she's unbelievable. And this one, I love the vibes here. It's just creepy and gross and really disturbing and messed up. And her as Pearl, as the old decrepit version of Pearl, is just a sight to behold. Again, the performance, I don't know how many times I'm going to talk about the performance, but my goodness, she's amazing. And this one too has some really good cinematography, some kind of interesting editing choices and stuff like that. And it's just an absolute blast. I don't know how you could be a slasher movie fan and not like X. It's a really good time, and that's why it sits at number 5 on my list. Number 4 for me is The Northman, and this is just a hardcore and brutal revenge thriller, and it's directed by Robert Eggers, who is probably in my top 2 or 3 favorite horror directors. This guy is phenomenal, and everything about this just feels real and authentic, from just the visual presentation to the costumes and everything. The cinematography in this is beautiful. The camera work is just incredible. And this is just, it's not really doing anything new in terms of, you know, reinventing any sort of narrative. It's a pretty classic, kind of straightforward revenge story, but man, it is really good. Again, the performances here, Alexander Skarsgård's good, and of course Anya Taylor-Joy's good. I think the standout here though might be Nicole Kidman. Her character is pretty great, and there's just a lot to appreciate. I'm kind of a sucker for Viking type stuff. I watch the shows, I enjoy the shows, and so seeing this, it was just a whole lot of fun. It's got just some weird bizarreness to it with sort of the rituals and stuff like that, and it's just, this one's got, like, you know, testosterone cranked up to 11 in this thing, but man, there's just some brutal, gnarly kills, and again, it visually looks gorgeous. One of the best looking films all of last year, and I really love, I've loved everything that Robert Eggers has done, so I can't wait to see what he brings us next. But man, The Northman is just an all-around, it's probably the best sort of rendition you can get of a classic story. And I like all just the Norwegian, Norse mythology woven in. And it's just overall a pretty great film. So that's why it sits at number 4. Okay, here we go. Top 3. I have been recording now for, an hour and 10 minutes. So I'm getting tired, but we got 3 left. So let's power through. So number 3 for me is, I think, the definitive surprise sleeper hit of the year, and that is Barbarian. This movie was shocking. And this was one that I remember hearing about it probably just a few weeks before it came out. And I read just a brief synopsis and I was like, oh, Airbnb horror. Okay, you know, whatever. And then I caught a little bit of the early buzz and people were like, dude, Barbarian is crazy. And I was like, man, all right, you know, I guess. So I went out to the theaters and watched it, knowing basically next to nothing about it other than it's an Airbnb horror. And dude, this movie is crazy. This is one of the most surprising and shocking movies I have seen in quite some time. There is something so fun as, look, I've been watching movies for many years. I have seen thousands of movies. And with that, there's a lot of times where you can kind of see how movies are going to play out and what direction they're going to go in. But man, I cannot tell you how fun it is. I cannot express to you how wonderful it is to watch a movie and literally have absolutely no clue where it is going. Man, when they find that, when she finds that little secret passage down in the basement, I mean, this thing just opens up into all sorts of craziness. And it's just like, what in the world? Where is this going? What is happening? And it just felt like every decision they made was just like, I mean, it just completely kind of blew my mind. And Justin Long in this is just great, and he's just a lot of fun to watch. It's got everything you could want. Twists and turns galore, just surprises for days, just craziness, disturbingness, grossness, creepiness, good jump scares. Barbarian, man. It's great stuff. Next up at number 2 for me, and this is going to be probably an unexpected choice, but allow me to make my case and hear me out here. But number 2 for me is The Batman. And I know that that is probably completely unexpected to hear on a horror thriller movie list, but hear me out, because The Batman this is not a superhero movie. This is a murder mystery serial killer detective movie disguised as a superhero movie. And man, The Batman is just fantastic. And I say this as someone who, by and large, am not really a superhero movie fan. And I've been burnt out now on the Marvel stuff for quite a few years. And I'm a huge fan of Christopher Nolan's The Batman. And so I never expected to be all that interested in another rendition. I was just like, there's no way they're going to do anything as good as Nolan. And then The Batman came out, and they cast Robert Pattinson as the main role. And I was like, huh, okay. And then I remember that I think it was the first trailer that came out where they were playing the Nirvana's Underneath the Bridge song, Something in the Way. And I was like, dude, that's a really interesting choice. And just kind of the vibe I was getting off. I was like, okay. And then I went and seen it, and dude, this movie is just fantastic. And I think it totally deserves to be on a horror thriller movie list because, like I said, this is a serial killer murder mystery with Batman as the lead detective. And I mean, I could just go on and on about this. Visually, it's great. Pattinson as Batman is great. I thought the flying sequence where he jumps off the building and just gets totally wrecked was just like phenomenal because it's just so grounded. Again, I just love the grounded, down-to-earth quality of it. Colin Farrell in this is just unbelievable. Obviously, the action sequence with the Batmobile is just, I mean, man, it's awesome. And I feel like I'm completely fanboying out on this, but I can't help it, man. Just the central mystery of it, I think, is engaging. I love that it has that murder mystery sort of a structure of it, of having to piece together the clues and put the puzzle pieces together. Paul Dano is great. I love sort of the inspiration he took from Zodiac. And as I said, I could go on and on about this, but man, The Batman, I think, fully deserves to be on this list, and it's my number 2. All right, here we go. We have reached the end, and my number 1 favorite film of all of last year, not even just horror thriller, but favorite film of last year is Resurrection. And Resurrection, man, was just something special. This is, I think, probably like an all-timer for me. This contains the best acting performance I've seen of last year, and probably the best that I've seen in the last few years. Rebecca Hall is unbelievable. And I can't tell you how many times as I was watching the movie where I was just like blown away. I was like, how she is unbelievable. How is she so good? And this movie is why I love horror movies. This is a hardcore psychological horror thriller. And man, just everything it did, all the vibes it sent me, I was just eaten up like a gourmet meal, man. I just loved it. I love just the mysterious vibe to it where you're not entirely sure what to make of things, where you're not entirely sure how to interpret things. it's creepy and it's eerie and it's unsettling and it's disturbing. Tim Roth's performance in this is really good as well. And I like, it's ambitious. I think it's creative and unique, and it's just different, and the presentation of it is different. And I like that it goes into kind of some symbolism and stuff like that, where kind of things are left up into interpretation. And man, I just had a blast really kind of chewing on this thing and thinking about it and processing it and going back over little details. And this one too has a monologue by Rebecca Hall in the movie that is, I mean, I don't even know what words to use anymore. It is just phenomenal and is really disturbing and unsettling as well. And the ending to this is probably my favorite ending to anything of last year. I just love how just twisted it was and disturbing it was, but I also like how kind of ambiguous and enigmatic it was too, that it just kind of leaves things up for interpretation. And those are typically kind of my most favorite movies, and they give you enough there to where it's not so abstract that you can't even get sort of a footing or a foundation, but they don't spoon feed you all the answers. And so it's just like kind of the perfect balance and mixture of that. And I absolutely love this thing. Everything about it, I thought it was just fantastic. I think it's a great film, and it's one I look forward to returning to many times to kind of continually chew on it and think about it. And I think Resurrection is just fantastic, and that's why it's my number one. So, I'm tired, guys. This is a long video. I still have to edit this thing. I have no idea how long this can be, but I'm wiped out. I have spoken way more words than I am used to on a daily basis. But anyways, I'm done. That concludes the list. I hope you enjoyed that. If you like content like this, please hit that subscribe button. I would greatly appreciate it. And also, please hit me up down below. Let me know what your favorite horror thriller movies were from 2022. I would love to hear from you. That's all I got for you. Thank you so much for tuning in. I really do appreciate it. And I'll see you next time on The Haunted Beard.